Michael Jackson suddenly stopped singing mid-verse. 80,000 people fell silent. He was staring down at someone in the front row, someone who had just screamed at him in pure rage. What happened next changed everything anyone thought they knew about the king of pop. But let me take you back to how this moment came to be. It was July 16, 1988. Wembley Stadium, London. The Bad World Tour was at its peak, and Michael Jackson was delivering what many considered the performance of his lifetime. The energy was electric, the crowd was euphoric, and everything seemed perfect. But in the front row, pressed against the barrier, stood someone who wasn't there to celebrate. Her name was Sarah. She was 17 years old, and she had traveled from a small town in northern England with money she had saved for 2 years just to be here. But Sarah wasn't like the other fans screaming with joy around her. 3 months earlier, her younger brother Danny had died in a car accident. Danny was only 14, and his last words to Sarah had been about this concert, about how they were going to see Michael Jackson together when he got better from the hospital. Sarah had come alone, carrying Danny's favorite Michael Jackson pin on her jacket, the one he had worn every day since he was 10 years old. She had promised herself she would be strong, that she would enjoy this for both of them. But as the night wore on, as she watched thousands of people celebrating while her brother lay in the ground, something inside her began to break. Michael Jackson was halfway through "The Way You Make Me Feel" when everything changed. He had just finished the iconic moonwalk sequence, and the crowd was going wild. He was walking along the edge of the stage, making eye contact with fans, pointing, smiling, giving them moments they would remember forever. That's when he saw Sarah. While everyone else was reaching up with joy, she was staring at him with tears streaming down her face, but not tears of happiness. These were tears of anger, of pain, of a grief so deep it seemed to radiate from her very soul. Michael slowed his steps. Something about her expression stopped him cold. In that moment, amid the chaos of 80,000 screaming fans, he saw something that cut through all the noise, genuine human suffering. And that's when Sarah did something no one expected. She cupped her hands around her mouth and screamed as loud as she could. "Why weren't you there when he needed you?" The words cut through the music like a blade. Michael Jackson stopped singing. The band kept playing for a few more seconds before they realized what was happening and gradually came to a halt. The crowd, confused, began to quiet down. What had just happened? Had someone just yelled at Michael Jackson? Had he actually stopped the show? Michael stood frozen on the stage, his microphone at his side, staring down at this young woman who had just challenged him in front of the entire world. For 10 seconds that felt like an eternity, nobody moved. The silence was deafening. Then Michael Jackson did something that no one could have predicted. He set his microphone down on the stage floor and walked toward the edge. Security guards started to move forward, thinking there might be some kind of threat, but Michael gestured for them to stay back. He sat down on the edge of the stage, his legs dangling over the side, bringing himself down to eye level with Sarah. The entire stadium watched in stunned silence as the biggest entertainer in the world made himself vulnerable in front of 80,000 people. "What's your name?" he asked her, his voice barely audible but somehow carrying across the silent arena. Sarah was shocked. She hadn't expected this. She had expected to be escorted out, maybe arrested. She definitely hadn't expected Michael Jackson to stop his entire show and ask her name. "Sarah," she managed to whisper, though with the arena's acoustics, everyone could hear. "Sarah," Michael repeated, and his voice was gentle, like a friend talking to another friend. "Tell me about him." "My brother," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "He was supposed to be here with me. He died 3 months ago. He loved you so much and I just wanted to know why you weren't there when he was dying. Why your music couldn't save him." The crowd was completely silent now. This wasn't a concert anymore. This was something else entirely, something raw and real and heartbreaking. Michael nodded slowly, as if he understood something that went deeper than words. Then he did something that would be remembered forever. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a single white glove, not the sequined one he wore for performances, but a simple white cotton glove that he always kept with him. "Sarah," he said, "I want you to know that I wasn't there when your brother died, but his love for music, his love for life, his love for you, that was there. That never leaves. It stays in here." He pointed to his heart. "And in here." He pointed to hers. He handed her the white glove. "This is for Danny. Will you keep it for him?" Sarah took the glove with trembling hands. And then, something magical happened. Without any cue from anyone, without any planning, Michael Jackson began to sing "Man in the Mirror," but not the recorded version. He sang it slowly, tenderly, like a lullaby, like a prayer. And then the entire stadium began to sing with him. 80,000 voices joined together, not in celebration, but in healing. They were singing for Sarah, for Danny, for everyone who had ever lost someone they loved. Michael Jackson had transformed a moment of anger and grief into something beautiful, something that connected every single person in that stadium to the universal experience of love and loss. When the song ended, Michael helped Sarah climb up onto the stage. He hugged her. Not a celebrity hug for photos, but a real hug, the kind you give someone who needs it. Then he whispered something in her ear that only she could hear. Later, Sarah would tell reporters that Michael had said, "Your brother isn't gone. Every time you hear music, every time you feel joy, every time you help someone else heal, he's right there with you. That's how love works. It never dies." Subscribe now and comment below, because what happened after this concert will blow your mind. The concert continued, but it was different now. There was something in the air, something deeper than entertainment. Michael Jackson had shown 80,000 people that beneath all the glitter and glamour, he was fundamentally human, capable of recognizing pain and responding to it with compassion. But the story doesn't end there. After the show, Michael asked his team to find out more about Sarah and Danny. He learned that Danny had been battling leukemia for 2 years, and that he had listened to Michael's music every day during his chemotherapy treatments. Danny's favorite song was "Beat It," and he used to tell the nurses that Michael Jackson's voice made him feel brave. Michael was so moved by this story that he made a decision that would change how he approached his concerts forever. From that night forward, before every show, he would have his team identify families in the audience who were dealing with loss, illness, or hardship. He began dedicating moments in his concerts not just to entertainment, but to healing. He established what became known informally as the Danny Protocol, named after Sarah's brother. His security team would quietly identify people in the audience who seemed to be struggling, and Michael would make sure to connect with them during the show. Sometimes it was just eye contact and a smile. Sometimes it was bringing them on stage. Sometimes it was giving them something to remember: a glove, a hat, a personal note. Sarah kept that white glove for the rest of her life. She went on to become a music therapist, working with children in hospitals, using Michael Jackson's music to help them heal. She always said that night at Wembley taught her that music wasn't just entertainment, it was medicine for the soul. But here's the part of this story that will give you chills, the part that proves Michael Jackson understood something about human connection that most people never learn. 3 years later, in 1991, Sarah was working at a children's hospital when she received a package with no return address. Inside was a letter from Michael Jackson and a small silver music box that played "Man in the Mirror." The letter said, "Dear Sarah, I heard you're helping kids the way I wish I could have helped Danny. This music box belonged to my mother. She always said that when someone finds their purpose through pain, they become unstoppable. Thank you for proving her right. Danny would be proud. MJ." Sarah never told anyone about this letter until after Michael died in 2009. When she finally shared the story, she said, "People think Michael Jackson was just an entertainer, but he was a healer. He understood that the greatest gift you can give someone isn't your talent or your fame, it's your presence in their pain." The white glove Sarah received that night now sits in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, donated by Sarah, with a simple placard that reads, "For Danny, who taught us that love never dies, and for Michael, who taught us that healing happens when we listen to each other's hearts." Share this video and subscribe if this story moved you, because what I'm about to tell you next will completely change how you see Michael Jackson forever. What most people don't know is that this wasn't the only time Michael Jackson stopped a concert for someone in pain. After that night at Wembley, word spread through his inner circle about what had happened with Sarah. His personal assistant later revealed that Michael couldn't sleep for weeks after that show. He kept asking the same question. How many people are out there hurting, and we just keep singing and dancing like their pain doesn't matter? That question haunted him so much that he did something unprecedented in the entertainment industry. He hired a team of counselors and social workers to travel with him on tour. Their job wasn't to take care of Michael, it was to identify people in the audience who needed what Sarah had needed that night: to be seen, to be heard, to be reminded that their pain mattered. The team would arrive at each venue hours before the concert and walk through the crowds outside. They looked for specific signs: someone standing alone with fresh tears, families wearing memorial shirts, people holding photos of loved ones, anyone whose body language screamed grief or desperation. These weren't random acts of kindness, this was a systematic approach to healing that Michael funded entirely out of his own pocket. In Barcelona, Spain, during the Dangerous Tour in 1992, they found Maria, a mother who had lost her twin daughters in a car accident just 2 months earlier. She was holding a picture of them wearing matching Michael Jackson shirts. Michael not only brought her on stage but dedicated "Gone Too Soon" to her daughters. He gave her his personal necklace, a simple gold cross that had belonged to his grandmother. Maria later said that moment gave her the strength to keep living. In Tokyo, they discovered Hiroshi, a teenager who had been bullied so severely at school that he was planning to end his life after the concert. His parents had bought him the tickets as what they feared might be his last happy memory. When Michael's team identified him, they arranged for Hiroshi to meet Michael backstage before the show. Michael spent 30 minutes with him, not as a celebrity meeting a fan, but as one human being talking to another about the value of life. Hiroshi is now a suicide prevention counselor in Japan. But here's what will blow your mind: Michael Jackson was keeping track of all these people. He had a private journal that he called his heart book. In it, he wrote about every person he had connected with who was suffering. He remembered their names, their stories, their pain. And incredibly, he would follow up with them. Sometimes it was a phone call on their birthday or the anniversary of their loss. Sometimes it was a letter of encouragement when they were struggling. Sometimes it was financial help when they needed it most. When Michael died in 2009, his estate executors found over 400 entries in the Heart Book. 400 people whose lives had been touched personally by Michael Jackson, not because they were celebrities or wealthy donors, but because they were human beings in pain who needed to know someone cared. Sarah's entry was the first one, dated July 17, 1988, the day after the Wembley concert. The entry read, "Met Sarah tonight. Lost her brother Danny. Reminded me that my real job isn't to entertain people, it's to help them heal. Danny would have been 14 years old. He loved Beat It. I need to do better. I need to see people, not just audiences." The most incredible part? Michael's accountants later revealed that he spent over $50 million of his own money on what he called invisible charity, help given to people like Sarah, Maria, and Hiroshi that was never publicized, never tax-deducted, never used for positive PR. It was simply one human being caring for others, on a scale that the world never knew existed. Michael Jackson died in 2009, but the legacy of that moment at Wembley lives on. Every time someone in pain feels seen, every time a stranger offers comfort, every time someone chooses empathy over indifference, the spirit of what happened that night continues. The greatest performers don't just entertain, they transform. Michael Jackson understood this better than anyone. He knew that his real superpower wasn't the moonwalk, or the voice, or the dance moves. It was his ability to see people's hearts and respond to what he found there. In a world that often feels divided and disconnected, the story of Michael Jackson and Sarah reminds us that healing is possible, that connection transcends fame and status, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stop, listen, and care. That's the real magic of Michael Jackson, not the glittering glove or the gravity-defying dance moves, but his understanding that music, at its core, is about human connection. And human connection at its core is about showing up for each other, especially in the moments when it matters most.